Well, I'm going to get underway in that case. So I usually start with some news and releases. And it's very cool this time because this time we've got some releases and updates from within the community. So we've had a few new members and things like that over the past few weeks. And I wanted to give them a little bit of a shout out first before I go on to the other stuff. So one thing that came onto the radar, or my radar, is this Lost in the Source trifold. And I really, really love this cover art. Like, this is such cool cover art. And this definitely caught my attention when I saw it on the Mothership Discord, I think is where I found it first. There's like a third-party promotions channel. And so you'll see that I get a few of these things from there. And so Lost in the Source, what is it? Apart from like delicious looking cover art, so it's a trifold, and it says here that the job is simple. Travel to ISM-067, do your paperwork, and fill your tanks with salty, savory sauce. Once you get this brown gold to your client, you'll get a payday and a super mega discount on beef cross-out like sandwiches. Maybe this seems like easy cash. Maybe you're after the recipe. Or maybe you just really love synth gravy. But no matter why you're here, don't get lost in the sauce. So they describe it as a corporate medical horror, and synthetic gravy meets corporate conspiracy in Lost in the Source, a pamphlet adventure for Mothership RPG. And this looks really, really great. I had these guys were like really kind to me. Not ready for gravy horror? Why not? Why are you not ready for gravy horror? So I had the pleasure of talking to Elijah, who has come into our community, and a little bit with Squinch as well. So they were, you can see here, so Squinch did a lot of the layout, did the cover art, I believe, and Elijah had the original concept idea. Sorry, Squinch also did some like writing as well for the trifold adventure, and then also Elijah did a lot of, like, it was his original idea, I believe, and it was originally from his home games, and then got it to a stage where between him and Squinch, they produced this module. So I think Squinch actually played it as a player and then approached Elijah. So it's a cool way of, seeing your things get out there. What else is in here? So just like with any good homebrew adventure that has been played quite a few times, I think Elijah had a ton of handouts. So yeah, he's got like 14 handouts, 14 pages of handouts, including things like, if I remember correctly, like employee information, and of course like maps and bits and pieces. It talks about the things leading up to the event, and sounds like quite a cool thing. I don't know, I haven't played it myself, but it is something that definitely caught my eye, and it was really great that it was someone who is within the community as well. Have I captured everything? There was some special thanks as well. So we've got Luke Gehring, who's been involved in lots of projects, Jasper Bass, and JD Clement, or Clement, depending on pronunciation. So so that's the first thing I want to shout out. The second thing is Lazarus has been working on these sector hexes, and this is actually kind of something a little bit similar to what he's produced for fantasy settings. And Lazarus is a part of the community as well, and he's been really great. So this is a hex map tile set, and it is made so there are lots of different image assets that you can create for your system or whatever it might be. And it has like tons of these little icons, tons of like system representations of systems, and also has lots of like these other icons, meaning like whether it's a number of resources or whether it's inhabited or number of planets, or I think he's got icons for things like you could use them for like military outposts, things like that as well. Then it's got things that could be used in Mothership, so like jump routes, thinking about where jump gates are and where they can go. And then has also got things set up so if you have different factions, is that you can easily represent, who has faction control over which parts of the system, as well as some like unique icons to make sure that you know sort of who is who. You'll also notice that even on the framing of the hexes, is that might be another way that you want to differentiate the hexes from each other as well. And then he's also got representations for some different like unusual celestial phenomena. So we've got black holes, nebulae, and anomalies. So he's got some other things planned. I didn't realize this. So one thing that he wants to do is Foundry VTT support, which would be really cool. It'd be great to see that. And then there's some other bits and pieces that people might find quite useful, like numbering, having numbering within the text or lettering them, which could represent lots of different things. When I think of Mothership for lettering, it could be in Mothership different stations and colonies, especially stations have different classes, whether it be like S class, A, B, C, and then X, and that could be an easy way to add this to your hex if you wanted to represent this as a map. But yeah, it's definitely worth checking out other things that Lazarus has put out. He's prolific, I would say, with all the things that he puts out. A lot of different like icons, tool sets, maps, and also published modules as well. Most recently is this Oni one, which is has this Japanese daemon theme. There's a few like generators for like planets and NPCs. This is what I was talking about with the fantasy tile sets. My personal favorite is this one here, this open spacecraft icons. So if you're ever trying to like create a map for yourself and you really need some like better icons than perhaps the like standard Mothership ones, or you just want to see more, then I would definitely recommend you check that out. But yeah, he's got tons in here, tons of really cool stuff, and probably, yeah, the ship catalog is really great. And there was this, if you're ever playing Moon-based Blues, he's got this great Moon-based Blues map here, which has like a ton of detail and is great to have in the background as you're moving tokens around. So I can definitely recommend his work. The Sector Hexes is made for HexKit, which is something that's also available on itch. If you want to if you're into creating maps and making sure those maps are like wonderful and beautiful. VTT platforms in the future. And then he had a couple of consultants, one which is Windblown Vagrant, who is also in the community, and yeah, he asked me for some feedback and input as well. So he was very kind to also add me onto that, his page, the item page. And like I said, definitely check out some of his other work. So all of these links are in the description as well. And then another one that I wanted to mention, which is who is responsible for Greenmoon games. So the update with his stuff is that he has managed to organize physical copies for a lot of his work, and they are available in the EU, and you can actually order them via itch as well. And he has a few things in his itch store. He's got Engram, the Vampire's Melody, Corpo Missions, and also Turbulence. I believe at least Vampire's Melody was for part of, I think, one of the game jams. Yeah, Triptych. So that was the Triptych game jam that I mentioned, I think, in the previous stream, which I think a new one is coming up soon. And yeah, he's got some really cool stuff. I would encourage you to take a look. And like I said, is that there is now the option to get these physical copies as well for his work. So yeah, take a look, see if they're interesting for you. And I'm sure if you want to ask him any questions, then I'm sure he'd be happy to answer them in the community as well. All right, so some other releases. So one of them is this one here, which is Outpost 33. And Outpost 33 is by Sean Murphy. And he was helped out by Golden Achiever, who has done some really cool actually as well. Ros Leahy, and also Stragand, who did this really cool cover illustration. And the blurb for this is that a supply ship descends upon the ice-covered planet of Kaldoth. During a routine delivery, shrill winds whip against the facility. The air crackles with electrostatic as the crew pull into the landing pad. There is no greeting party. No smiling faces awaiting their only lifeline. Something is terribly wrong. Outpost 33 is a standalone investigative adventure for Mothership role-playing system designed to be played over 1 to 3 sessions. So yeah, this looks quite interesting. I don't know too much about it, but this is something that has been released very recently. Yesterday, there we go. And for context, Sean has published a few other things, which include probably, well, quite a few, but this Daedalus Station and the Rim Racing League is something that he's put out recently as well. And then another one that I've seen him put out is this Alone in the Deep, which is a deep ocean pamphlet. And I think this was part of a, is that right? Is this part of like Triptych Jam as well? Maybe not. I just remember that there was a theme that was like similar to this. But yeah, that's definitely worth checking out. This is actually pay what you want for this one as well. And yeah. So he's also a New Zealander, if that has any sway on if you want to check him out. And yeah, so like Strand says, is that this is a little bit more investigative. So it would be interesting to know how this plays out in terms of the horror. And it sounds like it might be a bit more of like a slow burn, trying to figure out what is going on. And yeah, sounds like a cool premise as well. And yeah, so other people who are involved, like Golden Achiever, yeah, Matt Murphy, yeah, fair call. So Golden Achiever has put out quite a few different things. I'm not too sure how many of these are Mothership related, but you can check out his stuff as well. And he did the layout. And then Ros Leahy has done editing on like tons of different things related to Mothership, so abilities considered unnatural, Nirvana on fire, Cloud Empress stuff as well, and as well as tons of other stuff as well. So they did the editing on that, but I think if I remember correctly, they have like doing game design themselves as well, which is very cool. And then Stragand as well, who did the cover art, has done some really cool cover art on some other projects as well. But yeah, but I do love this cover. It's quite cool. Very, very like it. All right. Then the next thing I wanted to mention is this Grim Merchants thing. So if you're looking for something that is a pound of flesh related, then this could be something. So I believe this was released as part of, this was originally part of Mothership Month 2025, I think. Yeah. And the Grim Merchants is a campaign supplement for the Mothership sci-fi horror RPG, including 5 shady new vendors into the notoriously lawless city station of Prospero's Dream. Each one offers exciting and dangerous new wares, alongside a host of novel roleplay opportunities. Hello Mathieu, how are you? Nice to see you. I just mentioned talking about your stuff a few minutes ago. And so yeah, it has some different locations, and here it mentions that it's very much like a plug and play toolkit. So it might even fit into like other stations as well. So if you're ever looking for like extra shops and bits and pieces, then this could be something that could be interesting for you. And so this was written by Josh Kramer, also Michael Kramer as well for writing, and then the portraits were done by Simon Taylor. And Simon has done a couple of other things that have been released in the last few years, most recently this Year 11 one as well, and you can find his stuff at Spellbound. Yeah, of course. I'm good, thank you, Mathieu. I was just mentioning about how through Itch is that people can order your stuff, physical copies within the EU. But yeah, I said if they have any questions, they can ask you in the community. So sorry if I've set you up for a question and answer session from others. Another thing that has come up sort of on the, I keep wanting to say on the radar, but I'm trying to avoid saying that, is this Life Paths. So this is a supplement, and it talks about there's ideas of life story systems that are found in other RPGs, TTRPGs, and Life Paths aims to provide mechanical and narrative boons and banes while adding depth to your character's backstory. So yeah, we talked a little bit about character backstory previously, and yeah, so this is currently on BackerKit, and it's part of Burning Light Press, who have done some really cool things in the past. But I wish they had like a bit more of a description. Okay, so you got some ideas here. So they got some mock-ups in here about like for different classes. So for that, so it's a 70-page book containing 5 unique backgrounds for each of the starting classes. So you have quite a few different choices, and it looks like you can sort of do a bit of like a common path or well-treaded path, and also there's some like randomness that you can get into as well. What else in here? But yeah, a bit of like dice rolling. Here we go. So here are some like, I think some of the different paths or some of the different types of backgrounds and backstories for different classes that are probably straightforward in terms of like guessing what they might be, like a Teamster as a grease monkey or just an engineer, and then you've got some that might be a little bit, you might need to buy it to figure it out a little bit more. But yeah, it looks kind of cool, looks kind of interesting, and I would say worth having more of a read through if you're interested in sort of character background stuff. Yeah, and then the last thing that I wanted to mention, which I think it came up on like in the subreddit, I think, and someone has, this is giannangeli, so I'm not too sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly or not. So it looks like they've been like really cool about publishing things that they've clearly created for their own games, and most recently is this Combat Critical Tables, and it is pay what you want, and they have got some like kind of like cool ideas about critical failures or like bad luck, and then for critical successes they've got this idea of aces versus opportunities. And I kind of like that idea of 2 different ways that you can interpret a failure and 2 different ways that you can interpret a success. So yeah, worth checking out for sure. And yeah, like I said, all the links to this stuff is below. So hopefully there's some interesting stuff in there for you. The next section, or not next section, but another thing that I wanted to point out, last time I had a little bit of a quick glance at issues of the Hive Mind, which was this Tuesday night games release, and they are free, but they have tons of tables in them. And I only quickly glanced at them last time. So this time, to prepare, I've decided to put in some like fun tables that you can find in here. So in issue 1, you have like a D10 stowaway excuses. And they have sent to keep an eye on you by a debt holder aboard your ship. Or sent to kill the captain and pin on his forehead a game over patch signed by some guy named Paxton. And then another D10 is awkward situations you find yourself in when the gravity turns off. And I definitely can imagine this one playing lots of board games, which is just having set up a traditional board game with lots of tiny plastic miniatures. And then gravity gets turned off. So I thought that was quite funny. And then in issue 2, so there's 2 parts to, well, there've been 2 editions, I should say, or 2 issues basically of the Hive Mind. Another one which was 1d10 noodle flavor packets, and they had a Xeno Horn extra spicy. It's effervescent. It's erubescent. It crackle pops in your mouth. You can't wait till it forms high tension bubbles, so you get a squirt with every bite. Trademarked, by the way, that slogan. And who doesn't love having their mouth area and saliva stained blood red? Not proven to be addictive. Seek medical attention if suffering excessive bleeding from the eyes or other organs. So, slight cause for concern, I would say. But yeah, who knows? I'm sure there'll be plenty of people who'd give it a go. And then another D10 table. So I'm just like picking out a few of the answers that were kind of interesting, which was confidential imperatives for androids. So one of them was, should there be a containment breach, preserve and maintain any salvageable brains in order to examine relevant memories of the breach event. And then another one, in the case of a board member suffering from injury or disease, all crew have confidentially been tagged with which organs of theirs would be valuable to harvest as donor metal. So I thought these were quite good, these different tables. So I thought I would share some examples of them. And just to repeat, this is the Hive Mind, and these are free. So if you're ever thinking about running stuff and you just want a bit of inspiration or something that you could add to the game, or something that you're running in and you're like, maybe they walk into a station, or they find a terminal, or they find a person, then yeah, these tables are good fun for maybe, creating something interesting for your game. Sounds like my teenage years. So you're referring to the noodle packets, I think, Strand. Yeah, I'm not too sure if I should be concerned or not about that in terms of this, the addicting noodle packets. And yeah, that's all right. I mean, it's got good warnings on it, so I think everyone should be fine, more or less. So yeah, I wanted to just, I don't think I gave it enough time last time. So yeah, thought it might be. Yeah, so I wanted to include those in some examples for people. But I think each of them, don't quote me, but I think each of them probably 50 pages each of these 2 issues. So there's plenty in there, there's tons. Okay. So that was the radar with news and bits and pieces. Some comms chatter, so from our community. So like I said, if you're watching this and you haven't joined already, yeah, please, you'd be more than welcome to join the Discord community. We've had a first set of community meetups, which are really great, and I appreciate everyone who turned up. It was great to chat to people, and nice, Elijah, addicting noodles. So it was really great to see people. I had organised them for last Thursday, my time, and Sunday, and I think we had much better attendance on the Sunday, but I imagine that not everyone is going to be available every Sunday just because it is a weekend and people do stuff. So the only thing that I've changed is that I've actually made it a little bit earlier, as I realized that the time that I set was kind of getting quite late for people who were in Europe. So I've just made it a little bit earlier. And the other thing about meetups is that I'm hoping that something related is if we get more people, then we'll probably like split it so then people can like talk about what games they're playing or games that they have played or games that they're thinking of playing, and then talk with each other about like suggestions and things like that. And perhaps organizing things like a bit of like a showcase. So if someone's doing like an interesting campaign, or even if people want to talk about a particular module, I think maybe I can have the agenda open to people as well. And the next sort of major step would be to get some game sessions going in the near future, which I'm looking forward to doing, whether that is myself running it or other people running stuff. I'm hoping that people will be open to running stuff where, on the knowledge that, they're doing it so then they can improve and they can get some feedback. And I'm hoping that the community can be a good place where they can, especially if they're running something for the first time, is to figure out, okay, like take notes as they're running it for the first time, to figure out, okay, when I want to run it for a particular group, then they've already got some feedback from others that are happy to give it to them. So yeah, so that's a little bit here for the comms chatter for the Campaign at Length community. So the theme that I wanted to talk about today, like our main topic today, was sort of tips for a first-time Warden. Obviously, a few of you have Wardened already. Many of you have started campaigns and things like this. So I'd be interested to know what tips you might have that would be, well, maybe that were really useful to you when you first started, and also things that you wished you learned earlier, or if you can think about things that were like stumbling blocks for you. I know, like personally, something that also I continue with is, and I've mentioned it on stream before, is making sure that people are going, okay, well, in some cases, if players are like new to Mothership, is like teaching them, okay, about how often they should roll, and and what they should be rolling for. Like, okay, well, this should be fair, and this should be rolling for sanity, and things like that. So I still sort of, depending on the group, have to sort of adjust that from time to time. And so yeah, so I thought I would go here for some tips in terms of that. So I wanted to start with something that is actually in the Warden's operation manual. I don't know why I've got S here. So I thought these were quite cool and something that I thought would be great to mention. They clearly sort of state, buy a cheap notebook and set up some initial pages like an index and things to help you find things within this notebook if you're running many games. And then the order was important here. So invite the players, then read the rule book. I thought that was kind of interesting first, is that invite first, read the rule book, and then choose the scenario. So it's almost like pushing yourself to go, all right, well, I've got a deadline to actually prepare for these things, rather than pushing it out until like I feel like I know everything about this book. So I think that's something that is hard to get used to, that sort of like perfectionism, I guess, in terms of like, and also like nervousness for putting on like a fun session as well. But I think it's really great that they actually encourage this. So I wanted to highlight that as an order of doing these things. I wanted to mention some like good modules to start with. So things that are probably not surprises to many people, but the classics are Another Bug Hunt, which we've talked about a little bit earlier with Manuel. And this is basically written as a tutorial, and you've got the option to play it as a one-shot or a campaign, which is great, and it's a real testament to like how they organized that particular adventure. The Haunting of Epsilon 14 is also quite fun. So a bit more mystery, whereas ABH is more action, I would say. And yeah, I think that sort of like gets people used to walking around a particular base, but also like the number of NPCs. So the Haunting of Epsilon 14, if I remember correctly, has probably like 10, 11 NPCs. And so if you're a new Warden or new to GMing, is that just the number of NPCs and how they interact with, like, between them, what they do, and then also how do they interact with the crew or the party. I would say like ABH, Another Bug Hunt, is a little bit easier to run than that, purely just for the number of like people that are involved inside the base, because Another Bug Hunt is not quite like that. And then Moon-based Blues, I think if you are an experienced GM, then you would probably be also more comfortable with Moon-based Blues. Just because with Moon-based Blues, just like some modules in Mothership, is that they can be a little bit vague about how they start and how they finish, and what happens, and how can, what is the solve part of the mantra for Mothership. So, but Moon-based Blues, the reason why I recommend it is like the middle part, where like the mid-game aspect of it is a lot of fun. It's got some great mechanics. It's got some introducing you to like some weird NPCs. So that's why I recommend it, and it's been played a lot, and you can see some great actual plays of it as well. All right, Elijah. Normally I wouldn't bother with the GM facing book, but the WOM is a really good entrant, lots of actionable advice and tools to share. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think with the Warden's operations manual is really fantastic. And I think with the GM facing book, so I'm guessing you're talking about the player survival guide, is that a lot of it, I mean, of course, if you're looking for particular detail and particular rules, fine, as a reference, but the back page is really, really great of that book, just to have something that you can look at. And also I think there's even like a Warden screen. I think I've seen that somewhere as well. And I think that has like some easy things it has a quick reference to a lot of these things as well. One mistake I made, so Strand, was providing maps that are too detailed. It hindered their imagination. In future games, I'll only give out either sketches or rough outlines. Yeah, I think, that's interesting. I think I'd be curious to know, like, what aspects were too detailed. Like, were they, like, forever asking you, what is this in the map, and what is that, and what is this in different rooms? Or was it that they were just interacting with the environment, like, way too much because they were just exploring? Because I can imagine with some maps, people would be asking about like every little item on it, and it could get a little bit tedious explaining, okay, well, you've got that thing there, that's a desk, so that's probably like a desk in the security office, and on that terminal you can find these things. So you might end up having like improv what these different items are. I know it's definitely not a downside to Lazarus's maps, but his maps are really great because they are detailed, and there are a couple of things where it's just like, I'm not too sure what that would be per se, and like whether it would be like trying to represent things from a bird's eye view and also making them identifiable is tricky for maps as well. So I'd be curious to know what aspect of like too detailed and what sorts of questions were they asking you, or was it just like they assumed that it was different things to what you thought those sort of elements of the map were. I found maps for AVH and they kept focusing on stuff on the map, like, oh, okay, right, I see. So Strand says, I found maps for AVH and they kept focusing on stuff on the map, like there are 4 tables, but I don't see a door lock there, but that doesn't look that far away and such. Right. Okay. I would agree. I think it is tricky because sometimes like the size is actually important. Like I think with Akigata, a module that I've talked about recently, is that the handout maps are like, it's kind of hard to figure out like what is the size of the ship. With all descriptions of the ship and descriptions in a couple of the rooms, they say it's enormous. And then within the map itself is that it just looks like some of the rooms are just like a little square, and it's like, well, how big is the square? And so that idea of scale gets a little bit warped. And like I said, with some of those massive rooms, they say, oh, well, it takes like 3 turns to like walk across this room, even though if you're not playing combat, then it doesn't really matter. But to give you just the sense of scale, and that can be, I think as a warden, you end up putting, it's sort of on you to make that a little bit clearer about, okay, how am I describing the map? How am I describing these environments? Yeah. And so that can be tricky. It's a hard balance, Strand, I think, where is it important for that particular item to be shown on the map? Or does it just need to be like an empty space and then you give the description and then that's what they see? And that's kind of, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because you can have things that are, well, you can have maps that are very, very detailed, but as a result, people, like you said, will have expectations of like, okay, well, if it's this detailed for this thing, does this mean that this door is locked or not? And so it's really trying to figure out if the map is practical or if you're actually going to use it for like some sort of like storytelling element as well. Peter says, gradient descent maps have entered the chat. Yeah, exactly. So like, so with gradient descent, I think that's something that's kind of interesting as well, is that when you're giving out maps, is that, and I might be getting a bit nerdy here, is that, are you giving out the maps for them to know where they need to go? So that's one thing, because I find, if I'm a player, I find maps useful just because I can figure out, okay, where do I need to go? How far is that? And then even if it's more tactical stuff, then that can be useful. Like I take cover around this corner or whatever. And then you also have to think about, well, who is the author of this map? So generally why a map exists in a game session might not necessarily mean just for you as a GM or a warden to give it out and then they can look around it. It might actually be more for the fact that, okay, this was a map that was generated by someone from this story, and why did they create it? So with Akigata, they have maps that are from different, actually even from different points in time, just because that's a really long, there's a historical element to why the ship exists. And so it has like original ship plans, and then it has like current ship plans, and then it has like current ship plans but annotated by like someone who wanted to like keep notes about what the ship looks like now. So yeah, it really depends on like the expectations of the map as well, whether that is like, okay, is this purely functional, or is this like, how believable is this because of who is the author of it? So I think that's something to keep in mind as well. But yeah, definitely a bit of a trick with those maps. And My own preference is they are more functional, meaning that, okay, here's a space and I'll describe what's in it. And the only things that I'll place there are maybe things that are like for tactical combat, for example. So if there is like a turret or something like this, is that there is some representation of where that turret is. And if there's cover, okay, some representation of where that cover is. Because then it allows for easier storytelling and people can make their actions quicker, I would say. But yeah, I hope, some thoughts about maps. As Peter knows, I've got plenty of opinions on maps. Right, so some other things that I was thinking about was like some other module recommendations. I've already mentioned Akigara, but I'd be curious about what other people would recommend for people to play. I know that, especially for new Wardens as well, I think one that I mentioned actually earlier with Sean's work. So Sean Murphy has like created this like Alone in the Deep, which I mentioned quickly, and I've seen that being mentioned as a good, like a starting or a module that you can easily run early on. Just like going through my things. I think I've heard like Year of the Rat is quite good to run early on too. But yeah, I'd be curious what others would recommend that would be easy to run, and then also a caveat around, could it be run by someone who it's their first experience as a GM, but also what could be something that a GM coming from like experience with another system could easily pick up as a cool or interesting module for Mothership. So yeah, if anyone has any recommendations, chuck them in the chat. That would be great. In terms of viewing, a couple of things that I watched myself was Nobody Wake the Bugbear for actual plays, and they've done lots of different actual plays, including Moon-Based Blues, Slaughter 14, Year of the Rat. I think they've done one for Vibe Shetty. They have done lots of different stuff. So that's definitely a channel worth checking out. Mostly Mothership related. And that is a great channel. You know, I don't hold it against them that they're Australian, but it's all good. And then the next one is Mystery Quest. So Mystery Quest play a few different games, and yeah, Peter knows that joke of the Andrew anagram for Warden. Yeah, one that they play up a little bit. So Mystery Quest, they actually play a few different types of games. I've seen them play like Call of Cthulhu, Mothership, of course, and a few others, and they do some great stuff. Yeah, Bio Drones and Cryoclones. That, I think, yeah, Nobody Wake the Bugbear have done some episodes of that, and I really enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun, that one. They've also done Orphans as well. And for Mystery Quest, they've done Haunting of Epsilon 14, so you can actually directly compare how those actual plays between the two different groups, how they ended differently. And yeah, I think they've done a few Mothership ones. I'd say, if I had to guess, I think they've done like 4 or 5, and usually for them it takes like a couple of episodes to get through it, and the same with Nobody Wake the Bugbear. And at the end here, I've also added like a couple of some subreddit posts that I thought were quite good and had some really cool suggestions in there as well. Sam, yeah, of course. Shout out to 3D6 Down the Line. Yeah, I haven't watched their stuff yet, but I have to. I think you've probably suggested that I should a couple of times, and I haven't got around to it. So, yeah. So yeah, there's a couple of extra links to other posts, so have a look in the description. They're there for you if people want to see some other suggestions. So that was one of the main chunks that I wanted to talk about today. And at the end here, although I've realized that the end is sometimes the longest part. So one thing that I was kind of curious as I was like doing some reading during the week was looking at what is the value of some of the default starting loadouts. And I thought it was kind of an interesting experiment. And so I did it just for Teamsters, otherwise it would just take me way too long. So what I did was look up all the prices and also the total them up and look at, okay, well, which loadout is the least valuable and also which loadouts are the most valuable. So we had a bit of a range. So you had loadout 7. So you can't quite read this behind here, but it has like standard crew attire, nail gun, headlamp, tool belt with assorted tools, and lunchbox. And the reason why I've got this plus here is because there are some things that don't have prices in the player's survival guide. So anywhere there is a plus, which is on almost all of them, is that it's either this is kind of like the minimum that it would be, and then you probably have to figure out and guess how much like a shovel would be in this case. So this particular one, we had ranging from a loadout that is only valued at 270 credits. Second lowest was number 8, which had flare gun, water filtration device, and personal locator. Although it does have the subsurface scanner, so it's probably worth quite a more than just 300 credits. And then the most valuable one is loadout number 6. And this loadout, I'll see if I can make this a little bit. There we go. So loadout number 6 had crew attire, combat shotgun, but the thing that was the most valuable was your pet. And so if you haven't really read up on pets, then you can see that a pet is quite valuable. So if you have an organic cat, then that is worth 200,000 credits. And then if you have a synthetic cat, I think it was worth, what's that, 1,500. No, 15,000 credits, I should say. So that one is definitely the most valuable loadout. And then that was followed by loadout number 2. So the vac suit, the rigging gun, and the salvage drone. So I think the vac suit is, so the vac suit by itself is 10k. And then the salvage drone is 10k as well. And then after that, we had a couple of other ones with the vac suits. And we had this one, what was number 5? Yeah, salvage drone as well. So number 5 had a salvage drone. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Yeah, the 6-pack of beer, of course, in number 9. So number 9, not a hugely highly expensive one, but number 9 has the 6-pack of beer. Yeah, of course, it's great role play. It automatically, puts you in a situation. It's like, do I share? Do I not? So yeah, that's always a fun thing. Salvage drone is OP and expensive. It can be, that is for sure. I think if you start adding things to it, then yeah, it can get pretty powerful. That is for sure. And then what else was kind of interesting on here? We had Stimpack, explosive detonators, laser cutter as well. So yeah, I thought it was kind of an interesting experiment that I thought I would do and just see, okay, what is the range of values for these different loadouts? Because I imagine if you just took like the default loadout and you had an opportunity to sell it, then if you're getting 200,000 credits versus getting 200 credits, then yeah, there's a little bit of a range of wealth as a result, and a little bit of a range of what you can afford as well. So yeah, that was my little thought experiment for that. You're right, there's no problem, Techno. Ooh, that's a great question, Techno. So Technopath asks, first time chat, sorry, no reason to apologize at all. I know there are a handful of extra classes for Mothership. Does anyone have a list of what they are and what modules they are from? And in brackets, big fan of Terry Herc's 4 extra classes. There are a few off the top of my head. That's a bit of a trick. I wonder if I can do something a bit of a very, very quick search. So just going on to this all Mothership modules list that Chris Eriu has put together. I'll put this in the chat as well, just so then people can take a look at it. So to be honest, I look at this page like all the time. So I'm just checking out class here, and you can see, I'm not too sure if you can quite see that, but it comes up 28 times. So that could be a good start for you, Technopath, is that you've got this Android class. It's got a few extra things that are specific for Desert Moon of Karth. Now the trick is that sometimes it's not obvious where it highlights. Then there's this effective immediately ones that you've got like a director, marshal, or sergeant classes. But so there's quite a few in here, so that could be a good way of doing it at like a very quick way of like doing it quick. But yeah, you're right. In terms of breach of contract, yeah, it probably won't show up in here. And I imagine there's quite a few that don't come up. But yeah, there's some good ones. So if people don't know, I think there's the one that I have played myself. I'll just sort this so I can actually... so you can play Cultist and Nirvana on Fire. Makes sense. Yeah, so the one that I've seen... So you've got like Anodyne Printware who've done Moonbase Blues and Dinoplex and Pickup Line Tango and a few other things. So that's what Techno is mentioning, this one here, this breach of contract one. Another one that they've released is this agent class, which is quite fun. When I played it, is that you have some extra objectives and things like that. Convict class, yes. I think I've seen a couple of convict classes, I believe. I think Waco Matrixo has put out, I think he did like a convict one as well that was related to one of his modules. I can't remember if it was, I think it might have been Gas. I think he put out like an extra class as well. Hopefully that's enough to find it there. I'm pretty sure, I can't remember if he did like a class for this or not. But yeah, that would be a good thing to actually have. I'm sure there would be some really good ones. I know that there's been quite a few like soldier ones released, and yeah, that'd be quite cool. Rimwood classes, yeah, as well. And of course, like you got the Cloud Empress ones, which are not Mothership, like vanilla Mothership, but there's some other classes in that. I think Kate, is it that one? Hecate has some like interesting classes as well, if I remember correctly. But yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if there is like a list that I've seen, but you might. I wonder if someone on the Mothership Discord has put together a list. You might be able to find it in there. As far as I've seen, I haven't seen like a complete list. So yeah, sorry I can't help you more with that. Is there a reason why you're looking for extra classes? Are you going to produce like, are you going to create your own campaign, or what's the purpose? Or are you just curious and interested in seeing if you can offer more class to people? Yeah, of course, Peter, that's right. Yeah, homebrew classes as well. Marine doesn't seem to have that many class variants in the places that I thought they would, like Wolfsbane. I'm trying to think of ones. I'll see if I can find something. Yeah, thanks, Peter. Yeah, throw that in the Discord channel. That'd be good. I'm sure there'll be some really great homebrew classes and people coming up with some really creative stuff. So I was digging around on the Mothership subreddit, and I came across not necessarily, obviously not classes, but also some interesting agendas that could be used in campaign play. So I'll make this a little bit bigger. So people had like, this person had like collected a few, or had seen lots of people creating agendas, but not, they had managed to, well, they wanted to create agendas that were like not specific to a campaign and not specific to a particular story. And so they created a list which includes, I think, 10 agendas for each class. And what I wanted to do is take a look at some of these. So they had, admittedly, some of these tables with inspiration / stealing, but yeah, there's some interesting agendas in here. So for marine agendas, so just to reiterate, it's agendas that are not scenario specific, but what you could add like to like campaign play. You could probably even add that to like one-shot stuff, I imagine, in some cases. So we've got marine agendas. You are 0, which is you are a decorated hero. You need to defend your reputation at all costs. 1, you were dishonorably discharged, wrongfully so. Rebuild yourself. 2, the death of a buddy has spooked you, and now you secretly fear combat and confrontation. You need to overcome your fear. So, yeah, really cool. Like, I really like these, and definitely like the ways that you can fill in your character and go, okay, well, this is how I might appear to other people and how I act around other people as well. So I thought this was quite cool. You did a horrible thing in the past and it has come back to haunt you. You need to decide what you're made of. Okay. I imagine that's something making a mistake. You are unfortunately the person who had to pull the trigger for something that was clearly not what you wanted to do, but it was an order, so you had to. Number 4, you come from a decorated family. You need to gain a promotion or an award soon. Okay, so you've got this like family peer pressure thing going on. Could be quite fun. 5, you messed up in the past. You avoid taking the blame for any screw-ups. Okay. Yep. Just shifting blame. I like this. I imagine that could come up with some roleplay, that's for sure. Mistakes are deadly, so you don't let anyone under your watch screw up. Make sure they understand why. All right, so like kind of like demanding micromanagement type stuff. That could be quite cool. You're used to marine banter. Sometimes people might take it as a little too direct. It builds character. All right, so if you want to be a bit brazen and use some colorful language. You once ran away when your buddies needed you the most. You will not turn your back on danger again. Yeah, kind of like haunted in a different way. And learning the lesson of that. And I'm sure like riddled with guilt, that is for sure. You're used to rank privileges you once held. You expect people to naturally obey you, and you take great offense when they don't. Yeah, I guess this one you probably act a bit like snobby, I imagine, and just giving out orders to everyone and making just hoping that they do it. And you could end up with some interesting role play through that. I think it'd be quite fun. Teamster agendas. The company put you in crippling debt. You must pay it back or get payback. So this is a bit more of a classic mothership trope, I guess. You don't trust androids. In fact, you don't trust any machine that can operate without human interaction. Could be fun. Yeah. You're stubborn and don't like to back down, even if your friends might get hurt. All right. That's quite cool. Putting yourself in harm's way, I imagine. Maybe getting yourself into some shore leave fights when maybe you don't need to. 3, you're a loner that is always happier when you can do a task without interruption from others. Yep. Yeah, I guess it would be like being incredibly independent, only sort of trusting yourself with tough tasks, things like that. But yeah, I'd be interested in what thoughts people have of some of these. These are quite cool. They seem to be like really neutral in terms of like a campaign. But I think you could easily just add this to any character, even if it was a one-shot. And it just gives you a little bit of a taste or flavor for how you act with other people, but also how people can easily see how they can interact with you. And I think that's kind of a cool thing, is that as a warden, you're always describing the environment, but as a player, you're walking around inside that environment, and then it's on you to describe how your character does that and how your character looks inside that environment. And so anything that helps you be able to do that and describe to other players, and whether it's through the role play and what you say or how your physical appearance is, then that can really help with other people role playing. Otherwise, it's almost like they don't have, you're just like a body to them. Like there's no other, like, why should I interact with you with those things? So yeah, I thought this would be kind of cool to introduce and show people. So like I said, there are 10 of these for every class, and yeah, there are some like quite fun ones that you could see that would instantly create conflict, or other ones which would definitely change how you act as well. Cool. Nice to see you, Mathieu. Yeah, thanks for coming along. But yeah, a great source of inspiration, and actually the next video, like my next concise video will be also mentioning things like this as well, where it's giving your characters something a little bit more tangible, I would say, like something that you can actually go in and go, all right, well, I understand how I would play this person. And that's really essential, because otherwise it's like, well, how does this person act? Instead, having things like this, it's like, okay, it's quite a lot clearer how I might act as a result of these. And then a little while ago, I came across this great article which talks about mothership campaigns, and it's titled Mothership Campaign Framework, the Anti-Carousing Table. And so it starts with this problem statement here, which I'm sure people who've played Mothership for a little while would be very used to this problem. So Mothership one-shots are a lot of fun, but certain game mechanics, stress conditions, skill improvements only play out over multiple modules. And people want their characters to have arcs that emerge and develop over multiple evenings and a range of scenarios. But Mothership doesn't fit with a typical zero to hero journey. It is a downward curve of some sort that may very, very well end in death. So this blog post, I've done a bit of a skim of it, and it has some really cool ideas in it. Thinking about, like, when you have a campaign, what should you be thinking about? How can you be framing problems? Instead of just being like money as a reward, what are some other things that you can consider? So like this one is quite an interesting one here, is that we want a structure that allows players the chance to improve and even win, but more often leaves them desperate. And so it's very, very hard for them to like get a really good foothold in the world, especially economically. And so they give some suggestions here, like people should have in-game time to lick their wounds, buy equipment, and improve their saves and skills. Trends towards leaving people in poverty rather than letting them accumulate capital, and has the chance to cause them more problems, or at least spark some narrative discussion. So this is kind of a cool, I thought this is a great blog post. I put it in the description as well, and definitely worth reading, I think. And I think there's 2 parts of it as well that I have linked. Yes, so there's a part 2 here as well. And another thing that the same author, so the author, I guess, pen name, which is Pointless Monument, is that they also did some writing around like factions and things like this as well. But yeah, Techno says, to weigh in, in the hyper-capitalist, anti-capitalist frame, ownership is a form of power you can give players without increasing stats. Of course. Yep, I think that's really cool. I think that's a good point. And also it gives other reasons why people should interact with them as well. So if they have ownership of something that other people want, then that can create some interesting narratives, of course, from that too. Yeah, exactly. Like putting extra things onto their item sheet, or whether it be extra things that they put onto their ship, and whether that be things that they could potentially sell, or if it's things that they could, that have some ability themselves, whether that allows them to do more things in the future too. So I think that's a really good point, actually, Technopath, and something that is easily overlooked, where that people, and myself included, would just talk about, like, oh, you can train your skills and you can increase your stats and things like this, but also having extra items or extra things that the party can do, extra sort of abilities, then that's really useful. Cool. And nice to see you, Peter. Thanks for chiming in and mentioning some things. Well, to be honest, I'm kind of at the end of my agenda. So that's everything that I had for today. But if anyone wants to ask some questions, or they had any comments about the stream or any of the themes, then I'm more than happy to stick around for a little while. But other than that, I'll just remind people that we do a Discord meetup on Sunday, like I mentioned. So it will be a little bit earlier than the previous one. You can find it in the Discord community events in the top left. If you haven't already joined, you are more than welcome. You'll have, obviously, hear my own opinions, but also you'll get the opinions of lots of other people. Not only people who are Wardens, but you also have people who are creating as well. And yeah, I look forward to seeing how the community plays out. I'm excited to see when people put stuff in and talk about new things that I haven't heard about before. And yeah, it's always really, really great to see people chat to each other. Yeah, cool. Well, thank you, Strand. You're also a common contributor to the community, so I appreciate it a lot. Weaving modules together. Okay, cool. I like this question. This is something that I need to figure out a little bit more as well. So, of course, you have some situations where they have been made to work together. So if you think of like the games and adventures related to Dying Hard on Hardlight Station, then those join up. I think some of the adventures in Dead Planet join up a little. And also with Dying Hard on Hardlight Station, there's a smuggler's booklet that's related to that, and that even provides the same adventure or the same sort of setup, or maybe like a slight change on the setup, but you are coming from like a different perspective. So I can't remember some of the objectives of the original ones, but as a smuggler, you're like trying to find a particular thing. Hull Breach is a great shout, and they even have like starting campaign frames, and they have I think they have got like 3 or 4 campaign frames, and they go, okay, this, then that, then this. But yeah, I think I won't go into too much detail, Techno, but I think it always depends on your campaign, what are called like campaign frames. And so is the crew a group of bounty hunters? Are they sort of like corporate shill? Are they space truckers? Are they whatever? And I think that will help figure out, okay, this is how I tie these people together. If they are going around, if they are scavengers, then scavenging has a really nice thing, is that it's like, okay, you hear a rumor of this different derelict or whatever. Oh, that's nice. I like that. Something I've done is introduce Epsilon 14 as a functioning station before Bob goes missing. Is it Bob? Mike? Whatever. Have the players leave Epsilon 14 to scavenge a ship module, nice, before coming back. I like that. That's kind of cool. And yeah, that's great creativity to sort of go, okay, well, this place would have been functioning. But yeah, Year of the Rat is a good shout for that. I think that's an easy one. But yeah, those campaign frames are really important, and what are the crew trying to do, and what makes sense in terms of joining those together. You know, are they hearing rumors of derelict ships? Maybe they're buying a database of distress signals, or what are other ones that I've seen? Or do they have like a handler, like they're bounty hunters and they've just been like given jobs like bounties? Or do they have a handler, almost like, not quite like secret agents, but they've got like a corporate represented liaison, you know, Mars from another bug hunter is always a popular choice. Then that can help you in terms of, you know, getting them from one to the other. But yeah, I'd be curious about like in terms of like weaving them together and exactly what you mean. But I'll let you tuck that away for next time, and we'll chat about that, I'm sure. But yeah, really nice to see everyone. I hope that you enjoyed the stream, and I hope there were some interesting things in there. And I look forward to hearing from you again. Thanks for everyone who put some things in the chat, and thank you for all of those who just lurked, let's say. But yeah, much appreciated, and I hope we'll see you soon. Meet up on Sunday, and yeah, have a good one. See you guys later. Bye.